Oh, yes, okay. So we have four. Okay. Ready again?
Yeah. You may have to jump in and out of that seat.
Right, so everyone that is going to address both the virtual crowd needs to be speaking on this issue. Good evening, everyone. Gina Dunlap, and I'm Vice. Can we do a quick roll call?
Yes. Yeah. Well, I better put my readers on. Well, I can see. J. Michael Brown.
I am here remotely.
That's you. Alicia Burns. Dr. Craddock.
Present.
Gina Dunlap.
Present.
Jennifer Hancock. Jennifer Hancock. David James. Dr. Gabe Jones. David Kaplan. Dr. Mary Milliner.
Present.
Michael Nagel. Christopher Romaine.
Present.
Desmond Smith Jr. William Summers V.
Here.
Dr. Don Wade. Secretary Jarena Weathers.
Present remotely.
Gary Williams. Monique Porterman, and I think we have Angela Sanchez Vega sitting
Here.
in for Monique Porterman. Thank you so much. Jeff O'Brien.
Here.
And we have Amy Covich. Okay, we do have a quorum. Oh, Jennifer just joined. Jennifer?
Hi, good afternoon.
I see her name.
I'm here with camera on. But I don't see anything on your end.
All right, we're good. There she is. Jennifer, we just finished calling roll.
I am now present and I apologize.
First item of business on our agenda today is approval of the minutes from the prior meeting. Anybody have any comments or corrections to the minutes? First, let's take a motion to approve them. Have a motion to approve them. Have a second. Any corrections, comments on the minutes? Being none, we have a vote to approve the minutes by saying aye. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? None. All right, minutes are passed. Thank you. Next, we have the interim president, Ms. Ward Douglas, of your CEO report for us.
And now the musical chairs begin.
Good afternoon, everyone. I have just a very, very brief report, and this is to call your attention to items that are going to be coming up on the agenda for today. First of all, there's been a great deal of committee activity since the last board meeting. Both the Board Development Committee and the Community Engagement Committee have matters that they want to bring before the board this afternoon. The Community Engagement Committee in particular has a report that includes some requested action on your part. Based on items that they discussed at their committee meeting and recommendations that they want to make. Also, I want to call your attention to the bottom of the agenda where you see our proposed board meeting dates for 2023. Have a chance here this week. Please note these items on your calendar. And finally, under old business, we'll be having a discussion about the interlocal agreement. Amy Covich is here today. Give us some preliminary comments. We are not voting on this matter today, but us taking up the item will require a special call meeting. We'll be talking about that a little bit more when we get to the old business item on the agenda. Now it's time for the information updates and Vice Chair. So I yield to Jennifer.
So good afternoon, everyone. I want to give you just a couple of brief updates regarding the efforts and activities of our board development committee, but let me not bury the lead and tell you that unfortunately, not for lack of trying, but we do not have candidates to present to you today to represent both the Park Hill and the Parkland neighborhood. With that said, we are continuing to make headway in distributing information and helping the citizens of those two neighborhoods understand that this opportunity is available and seeking interested prospects and their applications. We do have a candidate that we will be interviewing after the first of the year. Given the time of year, we felt it best to not try to continue to push this during this busy time of year, but instead to wait until January. So we are going to convene our board development committee the middle part of January before our January board meeting, in hopes that at our January board meeting, we'll be ready to present not just a candidate from Park Hill, but also a candidate from Parkland. We're going back, if you recall, when we elected Tammy Hawkins to this board, before the concerns regarding her residency were raised, we had another small cohort of prospects. So we're going to go back through those again. In addition to that, we're partnering with the Community Engagement Committee, Dr. Jones and others of you who serve on that committee, to really focus on some outreach in the Parkland neighborhood. The candidate that we're looking to interview in January from Park Hill seems very qualified, very passionate, very committed, and we validated that she is indeed a resident of the Park Hill neighborhood. So keeping our fingers crossed, we're now aiming for January to present two candidates to you, and I'm happy to take any questions should you have them.
You need to continue to conduct a meeting.
I'm doing that. So things that we can see.
I'm sorry, I can't hear.
Okay,
Jennifer, you haven't missed anything. We're just doing a bit of musical
Okay.
chair.
Okay, gotcha.
So it doesn't look like there's any questions with Jennifer on the update from board development.
No, that
That's it.
concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Next, communications committee update. Dr. Wade is not present. Is there anyone else who may have something to offer about the communication?
What I can share is that, oh,
She
I don't-
doesn't have that.
He's on this. Everybody can see your hand.
yeah, okay, good. Yeah, just wanted to share that Dr. Wade and her team are working with us on the collateral assets. She did indicate that she would not be able to be here today. So we're continuing to work with her on those items for the partnership, and we should have a report relatively soon.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bear with us as we get our technology. Yes, next on the agenda. Thank you, Rita. Next on the agenda, we have the community engagement committee report. Dr. Jones, would you like to share anything with us?
Absolutely. Do I need to move?
No.
No, Kevin said
I would
no.
suggest, the speakers to be visible.
Okay.
If you don't mind standing, you are visible on the monitor, but show that you're speaking if you don't mind standing.
Okay. All right, so I'm Gabe Jones from the Russell neighborhood, on the board, and we have a community engagement committee. And first of all, I just want to thank the other members of the community engagement committee, because it was an evening meeting and everybody carved out time to get together while there was a University of Global basketball game on. Even though the record's not great at the moment. But we discussed three primary things. The first thing we discussed was creating an event calendar with events and things that are going on in the West End neighborhoods, so that we are aware of things that we can collaborate on, have capacity to support, show our faces, that kind of thing. The second thing that we talked about was compiling existing resources with community serving organizations, specifically West End community serving organizations. And again, so that we know of potential places we can partner with, things we can add capacity to again, and working with institutions that have gained trust in the community. One, to gain their trust, and two, to network with the folks in the West End neighborhoods. And the last thing was to, and the first two really plug into the last thing, was to work towards developing neighborhood priority lists that reflect the priorities of those who live in the 9 neighborhoods. So we recognize that we got some things to do before we can go out and engage with folks or engage with folks even virtually. And so all of those things culminated in recommendation for the board and a motion that I'd like to bring forward. And that's that we approve community engagement committee working on creating that calendar that I mentioned, compiling those community engaged institution resources, and working toward the development of neighborhood priority lists. If the board is all right with it, and if the board approves, the community engagement committee will work on hammering out the specific details on reaching those agreements. Anybody have questions for me? Okay. So I would like to.
David James, that second motion.
So the motion has been both made and seconded. Is there any further discussion on what Dr. Jones has presented or laid out?
Thank you.
Well, we need to vote.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I can sit down now. right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure, okay, all those in favor of adopting the community engagement committee's recommendation, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay. All right, looks like the recommendation carries. Thank you.
And let me just add that, of course, the committee is going to be working with me and Rita. They'll fill out the calendar and to arrange these feedback stuff. So then we will. You'll have to locate places to have resource people in the community. You have to go, so you.
Moving on, now we have a finance report from our finance chair, Wilson.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. Not really a lot going on from a finance standpoint, other than the regular monthly expenses that we have. We did incur cash event $22,000 for directors and officers not available. That could be expensive. We also had some interest. Came to us in the checking account executives. Some of us things to be. What I did is we're gonna get the Attorney James, and we are going to create a finance. So we can see, but looking at. That's the investment team. Your students and make sure that's being. Investment.
So just as a follow-up to that, I would say, anybody that's interested in serving on the finance committee, please send me an email. Great. Sooner rather than later.
I have any questions?
Thank you. Next, moving into old business, we have some discussion around the interlocal agreement, and Ms. Douglas is want to do that?
At long last, we've had, talked about the interlocal agreement at several of our past board meetings. We are at the point now that we have negotiated what could be the final agreement with the city based on approval of this board. But we are not going to ask you for your approval at today's meeting. Instead, what we're going to do is distribute a copy of that final agreement, give you an opportunity to review that. Then we're contemplating having a special call meeting this Wednesday, where we will in fact vote on the, and that'll be via Zoom. So Amy is from TACO Mix is here now, and she did the heavy lifting on getting us to this final point. So having preliminary questions, Amy is happy to entertain those questions. But is there anyone who would not be available for a special meeting this Wednesday at 4 o'clock? That's the 23rd. Is there anybody who would not be available?
This is Jarena. Jarena, I am not available on Wednesday.
Okay.
Do we need to?
4 o'clock.
I'll have a hard time before 4.
Okay.
Ms. Douglas, thank you for this opportunity to have eyes, on the draft of agreement. I guess I'm wondering what the urgency is, why there's such a short turnaround time frame for meeting today, why we need to have a special call.
This morning, all of this came together after negotiating 7 months, all of this came together just this morning. So for today, this would have been the first time, this is the first time seeing the document. But we did not think that it would be appropriate to ask you to approve the document today. We we're ready to fully explain everything in the document for you. So rather than ask you to take that extraordinary step, we want to give you some time to literally review it. And today to ask any questions in the process. Or on Wednesday, when we're on Zoom, we'll take any questions you have then after, and that would be after you've had a chance to digest this. It's going to be questions that may occur to you tonight, tomorrow morning, that you didn't have today, since you're just not here.
So I guess.
Oh, and I'm sorry, and then the rest of it is the Board of Aldermen.
Dating.
Council. Anyway, I'm an old time. Anyway, the Metro Council has a deadline of when they have to have any ordinances adopted and acted. That deadline is fast approaching. I think it's the 28th of November at noon. So if anything they're going to act on by the end of the year has to be prepared for final action by the 28th. That's also the reason why we have to do special call.
Well, I guess I'm just being transparent about the short turnaround. So yes, I've been eager to lay eyes on it. I know it's a complex document. The idea of having, I guess, some 36 hours to contemplate it is a little surprising to me. But I'm assuming that we could be not to have a December meeting. I understand the cancel schedule and deadline. But I guess I look as, does this absolutely need to be approved before the end of the calendar year, right?
It does.
It does.
In order for the Metro Council, if their intention is to have it docketed and either passed up or down by the end of the year. So for us, to be consistent with their line, we have to take some action. So now, again, I think a couple of days is an ample amount of time to review and to formulate an impression on the feeling about them. Again, Amy is present today. She's going to be live on Zoom on Wednesday to answer any questions.
Can I say something?
Well,
And
I was gonna request, since we have you here, we have time, that you walk us through this agreement.
Sure. And I was about, and I know we had some discussion at the last meeting about where our hangup was. And that there was a disagreement's probably too strong of a word. But a lot of negotiations going back and forth about who was going to be responsible for identifying the tax accounts, especially the business tax accounts for occupational taxes. And we finally got a meeting with the State Department of Revenue on Friday, and that's why this has all come together. As it turns out, State Department of Revenue is willing to take on that burden. So while this agreement is required by statute under KRS 65-504-2, it now, the provisions that's been stripped out, the part about who's going to know who is going to identify those tax accounts. And so the bulk of this is about how we are going to request the government financing once we've gotten to 2024 and identified the increase in the tax base.
Let me explain you on the original draft that the city gave us to consider. Their language required this board to provide a definitive list of all businesses in 9 neighborhoods. It would be our responsibility to determine the identity and location of those businesses. So that's what you push back. Again, we are at the point now where the state has gladly agreed to take on that responsibility.
And they're not.
For most chips, that's how it works.
Yeah.
Except for this one's about plot.
For the other chips, the city did not have the responsibility for identifying businesses. But you're talking about 3 or 4 block areas where it would be easy for the entity to do a walkthrough and a notation. And so because the city had done that for previous years, that's the model we wanted to use for this one. Our response was that's uncool. This is not the usual tool. The geographic area is much too broad. That should not be the responsibility. So again, as Amy's indicated, we have now come to the point where the state is stepping in. They are going, the state have the graphics off.
For the virtual people, if we can speak up,
Oh.
turn on my leaning forward, like, yeah, especially with your.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, I was just making sure that we addressed and made sure that, we looked at all the pros and the cons of having to do this, and it wouldn't be anything that would be deemed not in our favor, having to do it.
No, we've had, as you continue to talk through the rights and responsibilities, city lawyers, us, and we all sat down with the state, go through how we would prefer to. The state has readily agreed to take on this. And so, but again, that was the reason for the delay. I do not think it was a reason for this. Being stuck in.
I just see, Jeff, from Brian sitting and nodding his head, I didn't know if he wanted an opportunity to sort of lay out anything from the city's perspective around this.
No, I think what Ms. Douglas is presenting is accurate. The real challenge for the city was the revenue commission also is in one area. So I think really discuss, I think the way Laura characterized it wasn't a disagreement, it was more of a discussion of how are we gonna solve this issue that certainly this board doesn't have the capacity to identify all the businesses in the area, and the city was, even organization like the city was having a hard time understanding how it's sophisticated system has been identified as businesses moving in that area. So I just think it was getting through and getting the partners at stage and come up with a solution. But the agreement itself is really this agreement when the city passes any TIF legislation, we just have this agreement that's basically bind the city to dispersing the TIF and bind to here's how you report on or so we request that.
And so the reason that we're talking about identifying businesses, I just want everybody to understand is because the 80% of the increased occupational tax revenues are supposed to accrue to this body, right? And so while we have very detailed records from the property administrator on all the residences and commercial properties that we can ascertain the tax revenue, like that's already said and done. This endeavor hasn't happened. This is unprecedented in Louisville, Kentucky, to identify all the businesses. And so the state has agreed to help us do that.
And the state has agreed to do it, not help us.
Okay.
We will have the opportunity to review it, and if we disagree with their calculations, we can object. So we kind of have veto power. But the state is going to pull off tax record, compile the lists, and do calculation of the base year tax revenue.
Because they already have it. See.
Well, would you be able to walk us through, say, a very high level section by section, just
Sure,
touch on what the section is about?
absolutely.
We can have a head start in our own personal.
Right. Page 1 is just boring lawyer talk for why we're here. Oh, I'm sorry.
Does everyone?
Does everyone have a copy?
And so
I'm
it's
sorry.
going through.
Excuse me 1 minute. Was that sent to us? Is that?
No, we just got it today, right?
Yeah, we just got it today. Rita has a copy that she can send around to everybody.
I'll email it after to your email after the meeting. I'm sorry.
But that is yet another reason why
Yeah.
we're not asking the board to act on this.
Does it just?
Yeah, we got this about 1 o'clock. I think we got things sorted out.
It's in the email. See if we can.
Yeah, Rita's gonna go see if she can go ahead and send it to you all, but I'll go ahead and start walking everyone through it. The recitals on page 1, it's simply stating that who everyone is and the statutory framework for the TIF, and that the governing statutes require this agreement. So then on page 2, we start with section 1, and it's just definitions for the document. You'll see in here things like the activation date and base year, which are those are going to be the key years for determining what's the original tax revenue versus what's going to be the increase and how that's going to be calculated. Section 2 entitled representations and warranties. And this is a lot of lawyer required stuff of we are who we say we are, and we have the authority to enter into this document, and the same for the city. And section 3 was the sticking point, which was the account numbers, and now it just says that we're going to work with the state who is going to identify the tax numbers. Then section 4, entitled released amount. This is going to go through the, sure,
So section 3, sort of like the big
that's what
bid,
it is.
and that's just a moment ago, there was a choice I guess between with or for or who. And this is saying work together in good faith, as opposed to the stronger language, that is their responsibility, or is that?
Well, this agreement is just with Metro Louisville. There will be a separate one later with the State Department of Revenue that and they've agreed to enter into a written document, even though unlike every other TIF in the state, this TIF does not require a written agreement with the state, but since they've agreed to make this commitment, we are recommending that you do enter into that one so we can document that for the public and for our own benefit, that the state is going to take on this responsibility. So since this is just with Louisville Metro, whereas the original draft said we got the responsibility and they'll work with us. Now it says we're going to work with each other with the Department of Revenue.
But there's no mention of that expectation to enter into a agreement with the state revenue cabinet.
Right, because it's not with them. We can't, in this agreement, bind the state anything. So then it's,
Yeah, just bring. Remember in the statutory responsibility, requirement is for the board to enter into an agreement with Metro Louisville. Statute does not require. State, so that's extra. But again, the state has agreed to do that because of the responsibility of the state, which is a state law.
Hypothetical. State doesn't. Who would ultimately. That time, I would say I would somehow come back to the city opposed to the school.
right, we would, and this agreement can be amended with a written agreement, so we could always go back and renegotiate this agreement. I mean, I think the reality is nobody can do this but the State Department of Revenue. No one has the information, and it's confidential taxpayer information, so we wouldn't even have access to it. So if it's not the state and it's not us, it would fall on the city. But Louisville Metro, I mean, they don't even have access to all the information they would need that's in the states.
And let me say too, the meeting with the city representatives. It's with us and with the state. It's a very meeting. There was no strong arming that we had to do with the state to step up and say that they would be good. It was clear.
In fact, they'd already started the work.
Yes. Yeah. Clear to them that they needed to step up.
So while I understand that we can't obligate the state to do anything in this agreement, it's gonna put it out, I think it would be nice language to explicitly state what we've been told here today about that intention. So not that it's an obligation, but that that's an intention.
That doesn't change any of the substance. Responsibilities or so that. Probably.
Yeah, I mean, and it could be that based upon the understanding that the finance cabinet, Department of Revenue is going to, something along those lines.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's places we could work that in.
I mean, short of us, like, do we have anything in writing from the cabinet saying they've agreed to do that?
Not yet.
No. Yeah, so that kind of puts us at, that is exposure for us.
And that's why we still want to get something in writing.
But that exposure does not come as a result of any language here. So our ability to sign this document is not at all impacted by that contingency. That's something that we have to work out with the state. But again, the suggestion that this, we forecast this relationship with the state and aware of spots, we can do that. That's
And then sections 4 and 5 are just the technical language of how we're going to calculate increase in revenue each year and our reporting back to Louisville Metro, as well as how we will request the payment each year, because that payment isn't going to be automatic. We have to formally request it each year. Then there are, just like every contract, we've got notice provisions, default provisions in case somebody doesn't uphold their end of the contract, whether it's the reporting or even if Louisville Metro, this would never happen, but if they failed to make the payment and needed to tell that payment, that those provisions are in here. And then in section 9, truly just legalese type of things that you see in every contract. So that's it. It ended up, it is complex at one level, but it ended up being much simpler because of the change and who was going to impact tax bills.
So is the only entity responsible for producing that annual increment, is that Louisville Metro government? Or and the state has nothing to do with that other than calculating and crunching the numbers based on the amount of recognized businesses? I'm saying, is that increment coming from Louisville Metro government or is it coming from the state? The state's really providing data and then the money's coming from Louisville Metro government. Do I understand that correctly?
at the meeting, the state said, we fund the money to us for them.
Yeah, the money will flow from the state to us, which is another reason to have an agreement with the state, even though the statute doesn't require. Essentially, by virtue of the statute, the state will be obligated to pay the money to the West End Partnership. But they also set it up that we had to, by statute, enter into this agreement with Louisville
Which is
Metro.
why we're at this point in the first place.
It's a quirk of
Because
how
the
the statute set it up.
requires us to have-
Right, that's why, so it would be incorrect to make the assumption that by entering this written document that Metro is responsible, because that's why I'm asking.
Right, no, it's coming directly. Most of the TIFs, there are a few that pay through Louisville Metro as a pass through, but most of them are paid directly from the state under an agreement with KEDFA. And it just so happens that this statute was written to not require that written agreement.
But we will have to put in agreement that part of the revenue.
Yes, and they've committed to enter.
In that, they'll be responsible, one, for calculating the tax payment, as well as directing those funds to this fund.
Right.
When we have that.
Well, they have to do it whether or not we have an agreement. They have to pay the money. The only thing that is above and beyond is the agreement to calculate the tax. But by statute, they've got to give us, they can't get around whether or not. there's-
The concept of activating the TIF, do you have an understanding of what lever actually activates the TIF?
It is actually.
It's already out.
We're just trying to figure out how we're going to measure.
Baby has been birthed. Just being dressed. That's the analogy.
We got to figure out what percentile we're going to get on the chart.
I'll follow that. I forget, it was a few meetings ago, we had a gentleman from the state that
Right.
described what the process would be like. So, I mean, you mentioned then that he was working on crunching baseline numbers then, so that's why it's a bit of a surprise to me that was, I guess, still a question, because I thought he'd come to us So
That's partly why it was a little bit of a surprise to us too, that when we got the draft from Louisville Metro, it put a responsibility on us. And that wasn't because Louisville Metro was trying to do anything. It's just that had always been how those documents read. But this, we all know this tip is unlike any that there has ever been. So people are kind of, I don't want to say muddling through, but kind of muddling through and trying to figure it out because it doesn't fit the same structure that all the other states.
That was the name. Okay, very much. Okay. Do you have an idea? I guess, is there a date certain or a deadline for entering into an agreement with the state, or have an idea on how long it does? Is there, how long it needs to be?
But we don't have any kind of rush on it. Look at the statute. To see when the first payment will be made to us. In the year.
Okay.
So there's no hair on fire emergency. Rush on it.
Right, thank you so much. So the issue is, you will direct us to have a special call meeting this Wednesday at 4 o'clock, so that we can approve this interlocal agreement with Louisville Metro government, which then positions the Metro Council to deliberate over it and approve it as well for the mayor's signature. Okay, before the end of 2022.
Exactly.
Even though we wouldn't see any money till 2020.
The documentation.
It's just
signed up and-
FERC at the station.
Okay. Are there any other, I'm sorry, I've kind of hauled the questions here. Do any other board members here present or virtually have any questions or concerns or related to the intergovernmental agreement and where it's headed? How it's headed? Anyone? Mr. Nate, report.
I'll second, what Peter said. I think we do need, some sort of recorded agreement of this is what we expect to happen with this agency with, Metro, so that if there's any question in the future, everybody remembers what everybody agreed to today. Then somewhat secondarily, can't find where I saw it in the agreement, I'll have to review it. Referred to withholding tax and real estate. But I believe sales tax are part of TIF too as well, but those are state.
But that's
So
the
that
state
would be
level.
in this agreement, but that's expected. And that's part of the statute, but it wouldn't be here because it's an agreement with the city doesn't.
That's right. Right, not yet. I know that they'd like to, but yes, this is only governing taxes levied by Louisville Metro.
Those include local occupational taxes on businesses that have a physical nexus in the 9 neighborhoods.
Right.
As well as property taxes for commercial and residential real estate.
Right.
All of those properties that are located in all of the 9 neighborhoods. Okay. But we are, I guess I asked this question in the last meeting about sales taxes. And it was pointed out that that was a state tax, so I left with the impression that they weren't included.
No,
But
they
sales taxes are included.
they are included at the state level, just not in this agreement because
Right.
this agreement's not with the state.
So sales taxes, property taxes, not occupation taxes from the state will come to us by virtue of the agreements we're going to sign. So Louisville Metro, this agreement governs local property taxes and local occupational taxes that will accrue to the partnership at some point in time. Whereas the other understanding at this point with the state is that they will calculate the sales taxes that are generated from the 9 neighborhoods, like so sales taxes from all sales in all of West End they're going to calculate and remit those to the partnership at some point.
Percentage, yes.
Yeah. School taxes are not part of it.
No.
Okay. I mean, so everybody
That's.
understands. Thank you, Mike. Any other questions, comments?
We are contracted with the board. So we represent the board. I'm with the law firm Tech on Me.
So,
This is our.
so I'm just saying from your standpoint as counsel to our organization, to this board, we are recommending and saying that things that we hear, what we
Yes, to comply with the statute, yes, and that we are not giving up anything in here that is to your detriment. I like the idea of adding the whereas clause to demonstrate that this is all premised on the expectation the state's going to do that, but I feel comfortable in recommending this document.
Other questions? This is our council. She's here to make us feel comfortable. You know, the goal, I'm hoping is that we're moving at the speed of trust and wisdom and expertise. But don't feel like, you know, if there's a question or something that's rubbing you the wrong way, that you can't raise it, because this is very new to me. So, if you have any questions, particularly, I guess, between now and the special call meeting on Wednesday. Just, you know, make sure that you
Yeah, and we'll,
Opportunity on Wednesday. Once you take this info, you can go into the vote. You will also have an ask any questions you never had before you vote. This is not your only opportunity to take this.
yeah, and when we get this language worked out with the county attorney's office that you've requested, which I'll start working on tonight. Hopefully they'll get back to us tomorrow and we can go ahead and push that out to the so you all can see that before.
The reason I asked that question because several boards. And if something is not, comes back and something's not in here, my first question is going to be to my counsel. Why was this not in here? So I'm just making sure, you know, hey, so because I'm not in the town and there's gonna be some things that I may look in here, you may catch. But I'm gonna hold you accountable to make sure that there's everything in this document that we need.
Exactly. This is why it has taken us.
That's what I'm, I just want you to.
You are the document with which we were originally presented.
Yeah, we didn't want to saddle you all with the responsibility of identifying tax accounts that you have no access to. And have no ability to get access to. Yeah, that was we talked right after we got the draft and we both were like, whoa, we can't agree with that. So.
Let me ask one last question. I promise. The last question.
No, it's fine.
So there's the matter of how revenue flows to the board. We decide to invest those revenues. But there's also, I guess, a clause in the statute about returning taxes to property owners. And I guess I want to do either this agreement or the other agreement that's contemplated with the state address how we return property taxes to property. So we, the board, are responsible for taking our resources and making those payments to property owners.
It's how. Hours.
So in terms of having access to the data and records required to do that, will that, I guess, does that fall under this agreement, or would that need to be, again, an additional agreement for access to the data we need to execute tax refunds?
That will likely be an additional agreement in the future. But I will. And they'll apply.
Yeah. Exactly.
But to the extent that we need any data or information, revenue has been extraordinarily, and I mean, state revenue cabinet. Used to be cabinet long ago, department, revenue department, I'm showing you. It used to be the revenue cabinet. They have been extraordinarily committed to making all of this. And to the extent we need any assistance, they, at least for now, stand ready.
As a statement. But our real estate data shows that property value is the local rented out.
Well, it is. It's a local elected office, but it's technically an arm of the state and falls under revenue department. It's a weird quirky way that our government.
It's an industry.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll see that. Thank you. Moving on, is there any new business?
Let me just ask again, so we want to come Wednesday special call meeting. We understand what the purpose is, and then you'll have another opportunity. to ask questions, and we have those questions.
Ms. Douglas, I will, no, I've got to check something before I can commit to being there. President Lane.
I was just gonna make a motion that we have a special call meeting.
Been moved and seconded that we have a special call meeting to adopt the interlocal agreement metro on Wednesday, November 23rd, 23rd at 4 p.m. via Zoom. Is there any discussion? In person or virtual? Seeing none, those in favor of holding special call meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say, those opposed, please say nay. All right, the meeting is approved.
And just quickly, since there's a name up there you might not recognize, Mark Ferris is with my office and has been working. So that's why he is on.
Thank you very much. That discussion, yeah, very exciting. Okay, any new business to offer? From board members or staff? Okay, no new business. We now have time for public comments. That'll be limited to 3 minutes per person. Is there anyone in the room with this today that would like to address the board? Is there anyone virtual?
Let me take a look and see.
Yes, it looks like there is a question virtually in the chat.
We have. What is it, 6 attendees? I don't see any. Yeah, so we'll go to chat. Okay, so that was fixed, the chat, that the audio was fixed. Are y'all trying to rewrite them? Yeah.
And I think Madam Vice Chair, just is clarification. The obligation at this point on agenda is to receive statements from the public to answer
Questions, right? So there's really nothing anyway in the chat. And no participants. I don't see any hands.
Okay, all right.
Excuse me.
Where?
Oh,
I do.
May I
Oh,
just ask,
different.
because may I ask exactly, I'm sorry, I didn't hear it, how it does work for public statements? What people have to do to be able to be heard?
Oh, how, okay, so. The process, Secretary Weathers, anyone who wants to speak publicly can email, call, I set it up. Otherwise, if no one does that, then we open it up at the end of every meeting for 5 participants to have 3 minutes each, whether you're in the room or whether you're virtually. And like the last meeting, you know, we had a gentleman who scheduled in advance. But if there's someone, because it's a public meeting, and they decide they want to get up and use that 3 minutes, they're perfectly invited to do so. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you so much. I just know that there was a question in the chat and I'm just trying to understand when we respond to those questions, when we don't respond. That's my question.
Well, I'm trying to get clarification on the question. The question I saw was more of a comment if we were trying to rewrite the bill. Is there a question I missed? Because we can follow up via email on it, but yeah, now Danita Wright, I'm gonna allow her to speak, but I didn't see a question other than, I don't know if that's a question or a statement. Are we trying to rewrite the WEOP bill? That's the only thing that I see in chat.
Yes,
will
that's
go
what I
over-
see.
Okay, all right. I will go over here now and opened it up for Ms. Wright. I'm asking you to unmute. And
Okay.
you can speak now. There you are.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, because I can barely hear what you guys are saying, the bits and pieces I'm picking up is that there's an agreement or an MOU or something with the Metro Council that they're to handle the tax process of the taxes. Am I understanding that correctly? They want to handle the money?
Laura.
Ms. Wright, I mean, generally speaking, yes, this is an agreement between the partnership and local Metro Absorption and the arrangements that'll play out over the next 20 years, yes.
Doesn't that go against the bill that said that the WEOP board is supposed to, the city and the state is to stay out of processes like this with the WEOP board?
Ms. Wright, can you hear me?
Yes.
Please understand that your right at this point is to make the statement. Your ability to speak was not including asking questions of the board.
Okay, okay, say that again.
At this point on the agenda, the public has a right to make statements. Your right is not to ask questions of the board at this time. You're
Okay.
open to see your statement.
Okay, what does that mean? I say something and then it's just silence? What does that mean? I just make a statement.
Yes, you can make a statement.
Okay, I made my statement.
Thank you, Ms. Wright. Are there any other participants that would like to make their statements? Anything else on the chat?
No, I don't see any more hands.
Okay.
And this is the list of attendees. And hers was the only one up.
Okay, moving on to our meeting. So we just approved a special call meeting for this Wednesday. As has been pointed out, the 2023 meeting dates are noted in your agenda. Can you believe it? That we're knocking on 2023 and the board decided not to meet in December, correct? Yes. So this is our last in-person meeting of the year. President Jay.
No, go ahead.
You had to fix.
Yeah, I was just gonna make a motion that the board adopt the meeting schedule as published in Union.
There's second. The moved in second that we adopt the 2023 meeting calendar that's listed on today's agenda. Any discussion about that? Mr. Nate?
So we adopted to not meet this December, but this calendar includes that we'll meet on this. I don't know how many of us are gonna show up.
Well, there is an asterisk that says discussion for the appropriate date change will need to be discussed and adjusted. I'm assuming much like we did this year as we approach the holidays. So that's the intention is to reschedule. Do we just want to strike the last 2 days and decide that?
That's where I'm in.
Right, so we could adopt it as is, which was the motion. I guess, if there's other discussion around that. Did you speak up, David, Mr. Kaplan?
Trying to sell it with fast versus.
I think we're approving it as with them, so yeah, I'm good with that.
Do you want to add an asterisk to November 27th, which would be the. It doesn't happen.
I put the asterisk in there for the entire year. What I did is I set up, the fourth Monday is what the board voted, the meetings would be on in each month. And the asterisk is so that the board can decide in January which ones need to be adjusted. So that's for the asterisk is for the whole year. You know, there may be some reasons, holidays or what have
Justin says.
you. Yes.
Any other discussion on the 2023 meeting calendar? And I guess just generally those will be held as at the same location.
Working on the one, but it's to be determined. We have to work out. Yeah.
Okay. All those, any other discussion on the meeting calendar? All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed, please say nay. All right, the meeting calendar passes as listed from question. And with that, that brings us to the conclusion of today's agenda. I would hope that everyone has a wonderful holiday, Thanksgiving holiday. And remains thankful and, let's see, do you have a motion to adjourn?
Moved.
Second. All right, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Secretary Weathers, we had some internet connection issues here. I will email that document to all the virtual people as soon as I can.
Okay. Thank you so much.
It must have come through. It must have come through while I was in the meeting.
Okay.
It's all. Ms. Sanchez, I'll send you.
Thank you. Thanks, Rita.
Thank you all.
For those of you who have not had your pictures taken, who has not had their pictures taken, they need to go down the hall with Lisa. Clinton is there to have your pictures taken. You have your picture taken? You have your picture taken? Okay. Excuse me, David and Gina, you are taking off the boxes. So you can. So I look at the picture. Yeah. Like she's ready to throw it in the air. Yeah, it would take her himself.